Okay, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. It's Liam Hartree here today with another episode of Presenting Champions for the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm joined by a very special guest who has a fascinating story to tell. Today I'm joined by George Langley-Poole. Hopefully, I'm saying that all the right way. And today's guest, as well as being a strongman competitor, today's guest is also a Buddhist as well, very passionate about mindfulness. We'll be delving a little bit deeper today, as always, what I always say in my talks. We won't just be talking about sports, but we'll also be talking about the mindset that it takes to reach a high level in one of the toughest sports in the world. That's true. But today, I think we're going to be going even deeper again, getting into some tips that can help you watching this or listening to this in your daily life in some way. Now, obviously, everyone's journey is unique, but I really feel that George has some incredible insights to share with us today that will be of benefit to many people. Obviously, the sports stuff, the fun stories from Strongman, bouncing back from hardship and adversity, all of these good things will be covered as well. Some fun stories from competitions. So stay tuned, everyone. And George, thank you for coming on the show and thank you for making time. Also, just so I don't forget, thank you for bearing with me while we had to reschedule this. I forgot to say earlier, but I really appreciate that as well.
Thank you for having me, Liam. And I understand the big problems and issues that you've had in relocating. And it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be asked to come on and talk to you.
Well, it's my pleasure, and as I've said, obviously your achievements in strongman is fantastic, but what you encapsulate as a person and the wisdom that you put across in a very fun and relatable way, through your social media and everything, I think will be very beneficial. Yeah, I mean, moving from the UK to Cyprus, not to go off on a tangent, but it's been a big upheaval. Obviously, I'm here now and it's going well, but let's just say mindfulness has been very useful in actually, funnily enough, in that process. But anyway, enough about that for now. We'll come back to that. But in terms of you and your life, when it comes to starting out in sports, I think we'll start there. As I said, I don't always start at the beginning with my guests, but I think with yourself, going back to your early years, the beginning of your life, to hear a little bit about where you're from, and to hear a little bit about if sports was something that was always part of your life or if it's something that came later. Let's start there, please, George.
I grew up on the edge of Birmingham in Warwickshire. It's been a very long time since I lived there, though. I grew up in a former council estate. It's gone very much upmarket now, as I think an awful lot of former council estates have over the years. As for regards sports in my life, I come from quite a sporting pedigree, actually. My great grandfather on my mother's side was a very good cricketer. My grandfather on mother's side was a very good cricketer as well. Her uncle was considered for West Bromwich Albion football team. My mother was one of the best church bell ringers in Britain, which, believe it or not, is a very athletic endeavour. On my father's side, my grandfather was a Commonwealth weightlifter for the country of South Rhodesia, which of course doesn't exist anymore. My father was considered for the British Olympic sailing team and for the national team for India for windsurfing as well when he lived in India for a short period of time. So I come from quite an athletic background. I, however, was not very athletic as a young man. I was, I won't beat around the bush there. I was the chubby boy in class, and I did not do well in sports in school. I didn't particularly get on with my PE teachers, and I think that there was an awful lot of focus on team sports like football, like rugby, like cricket. And I was never very good at those. And I think it's only a little bit later on in my life that I've found the thing that I love, which is lifting weights and strongman. I'd always watched strongman as a boy. One of my earliest memories actually was watching, excuse me, was watching Gary Taylor win World's Strongest Man. And since then, I've always watched strongman whenever it's on television around the Christmas time. But I think the lesson of my earlier life there, the way to look back at that is if somebody is the boy who doesn't, or the girl for that matter, who doesn't feel athletic, who don't feel like you have a sport, who doesn't feel like one of the things that are very often taught at schools is something new, then branch out and look for something. Because I can guarantee you that you have a sport out there, that you have an athletic endeavor out there that is something that will suit you better. And you'll find you have both a natural and an earned skill in it. I promise you, it is out there. It took me a long time to discover the thing that I love and enjoy. But here we are.
Wow, that's a beautiful description, actually, George, of finding your place in the world. I love also what you said there as well about a natural and an earned talent, because that's a very important aspect that I think we'll touch on shortly. Before in a moment, I'll talk about how you found weightlifting. Before we do, in terms of your philosophical aspect of your nature, I'm going to call it that because you obviously have an inquiring mind. That's what I'm getting at. Was that there in school? And if so, did you have any interest in, say, spirituality or some of these things? Did that come later? I ask this because it's not always encouraged in academia necessarily to have that type of inquiring mind, if you know what I mean with this one. It might have been for you, but it's not for a lot of people.
I could not agree more that inquiring minds as to such thing is not something that's overly encouraged in schools, and it probably should be. It's something that has always been there with me. I've always had questions about the bigger questions in life that the dogmatic views would just not answer. And more than that, I think for some reason there's a cultural taboo about talking about things. There certainly was when I was younger. And I mean, I'm 37 now. When I was in school, it was just something that was not discussed. It was cringe. You just didn't talk about it. You'd almost be socially ostracized if you did. And so, although I've always had those questions about life, about the nature of things, about the nature of people, it's something that I found I've really come into more and more as I've got older.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, finding your place in the world is something that's resonating now, and I mean that as a compliment because to be authentically yourself is one of the most beautiful things in the world, and so many people spend their time trying to be something other than what they are in one way or another. I love your authenticity, and that's really something that drew me to you with your sort of social media, your online presence, the way you come over. I mean that as a compliment. It's something that the world needs more of, really, in my opinion. So okay, so weightlifting and everything like that, you said it took you a long while to find that. When you did find it, how did that happen in the beginning, please?
Well, I consider my weightlifting in two phases, which is that I got into it as a teenager, primarily for aesthetic purposes, because what young teen boy does not want to look better? And so, I started weightlifting to look better, for the aesthetic purposes of it. At some point in my early 20s, I stopped that because I began working on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and it just didn't seem important to do that anymore. At that time, before that, I had looked at powerlifting. I think I was a mediocre powerlifter at best. That was, although I enjoyed it, that wasn't really my sport. Um, and then in 2016, my brother's wedding was coming up the next year, and I decided again that I wanted to look a bit better. I wasn't very comfortable with myself for my brother's wedding, so I began lifting purely for aesthetics again. And it's at that point I discovered I'm quite good at this. And that year, 2016, and the following year, 2017, was a very big year for weightlifting, and in particular the sport of strongman in Britain, because of the accomplishments of Eddie Hall, who not only was the first man to ever lift over a half ton, 500 kilos, and the only man still to ever do it in competition from the floor, but to be a guy from the Midlands who won the world's strongest man, which again was a sport that I'd watched from a young time. And I watched Ed and I thought, wow, I wonder how strong I could get if instead of working just for aesthetic purposes and how I look like, I were to see how strong I could get. And so that's what I started doing. And what I did was go to my local gym, your normal commercial gym, with a very small with a very small goal of I'm going to work out at this gym until I'm the strongest man at this gym, and then I'm going to go and find a gym where people lift heavier. So that's what I did. My first gym was called Gin and Tonic in New Toxeter in Staffordshire. Very cute name. I was there for 3 or 4 months before I discovered I'm pretty much the strongest guy at this gym now. Went to another gym, started at a pure gym, then moved on to another gym called Foundry until I ended up where I am now, 6 years down the line at Strength Asylum in Stoke, which, funnily enough, was the gym that Ed Hall trained at when he was World's Strongest Man. And it's just safe to say that the talent that's at this gym means that I'll probably never be looking for another one.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. But I'm just picturing that. But that is a valuable lesson in itself, isn't it, George? I mean, the people that you surround yourself with in life is a very, very important thing. And even in that competitive aspect as well, surrounding yourself with people who've done something that you want to do, learning from those people and everything of that nature, it's a very valuable lesson. Funnily enough, one of the biggest things that comes up when I do these talks is actually what I use the term the power of association, but basically, they say we become the sum of the 5 people with whom we spend the most time and all this type of thing. And it is true. I mean, many people have to change their peer group. So I love that. Now, before we go on further with the strong man and everything, with the spiritual side of your life, it's first of all, it's something that I feel that we have in common. Is very much an interest of mine as well, very much an interest of yours. Something that I think is very valuable to people in the world that we live in today, and this is my reason for bringing this up, when the world has gotten increasingly fast-paced, increasingly chaotic. I personally feel, as we'll talk about mindfulness now in just a moment, that the world has become less mindful because of technology like this, where people are multitasking, people are on the phone and texting and cooking dinner and doing whatever all at once and this type of thing, which is been proven to not be good for people's mental health, although it's good to be able to do it from time to time. So I'm just giving you the context of this conversation. But in terms of your interest in Buddhism and in spirituality and this type of thing, going back to the inquiring mind, going back to questions, where did you first get involved in that? Because obviously before the internet as well in Britain, it wasn't necessarily very prevalent. So I'm curious if you found this when you were younger, when you were a teenager, or if you found this a little bit later and more recently in your life.
Well, I think where that comes down to is a crisis that happened, a spiritual crisis, an existential crisis that happened when I was about 23 or 24. And I think that this is something that happens to a lot of us. It's something that's not commonly talked about. Although I have heard it referred to as the quarter life crisis as opposed to the midlife crisis. I was educated as a Catholic, but I just never believed it. Not really. And I tried, but I just didn't believe it. And when it hit me in the middle of that crisis, that not only didn't believe it, that I did believe in something, but I didn't know what that was. So I looked at a number of religions. I studied a number of religions and another number of types of spirituality, primarily thinking about, is there an afterlife? It's a thought that we've all had. It's a worry, it's an anxiety that I think a lot of us have, about what would happen if there wasn't. And importantly as well, something that never occurs to a lot of people is what happens if there is. How does one live, a good life? It's a thought that has occurred to me, and that's when my investigation into this began. And I looked at all of the Abrahamic faiths. I spent a long time looking at paganism, specifically through Saxon paganism, which is something that still sort of like inspires certain aspects of my personality and beliefs to this day. In the same way that Japanese Zen Buddhism takes into account Shinto, which would be the Japanese folk religion, I don't think it's outside of the realms of possibility for somebody of my own background to look into our own version of folk religion in the West and in Britain, and take into account aspects of mindfulness as well. But I think it's really and truly over the last 2 years that I really began to see the benefits, first of all, of the practices that come along with mindfulness. And then later on, the real belief system in it and what that can mean for you in your daily life.
Absolutely. It's an incredible description of your journey. And again, going back to what I said earlier, a description of the questions that you had in terms of, what are we doing here? What is the meaning of all this? I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but as an oversimplification. And I think it's very valuable because, as you said earlier on, a lot of people won't share that they have those types of thoughts and interests because of this basically fear of ridicule. They feel, okay, if I come out of this and say I'm interested in that type of thing, will I be humiliated, embarrassed, ridiculed, whatever? And it's very, very good that you are sharing that. Especially, I love what some people would see as a contrast between the toughness of strongman and the gentleness of spirituality. Now, I know I can see they connect differently than that, but from a certain perspective, that's very interesting. And when you sort of found a home in this, I suppose would be the best way I can think of to put it. In other words, like what you were saying earlier, you found your sport, you found something that suited you with weightlifting. We will come back to that now. When you found a place that spiritually suited you in its application, can you share with us a little bit about that process, basically, in terms of you tried these other things and you thought, okay, it's not quite right for you. I mean, it's different for different people, but you found, say, let's call it Zen, just for simplification. You found that, and you thought, okay, this is me. That process, I doubt very much it was an overnight thing. Maybe it was, but can you share with us a little bit about that process of coming into that, if you get what I mean?
Absolutely. When you use mindfulness for the purposes of meditation, that is seeking peace within oneself. One does it through a number of practices. The most commonly known one would be meditation, sitting cross-legged on the floor and trying not to think of something. It would be the perception of what that is. In reality, that's not quite how mindfulness works. The meditation becomes letting go of one's ego, letting go of one's thoughts, be they positive and negative, and simply being. And traditional Buddhism does this through ritual, through dogma. What we will call Zen Buddhism or mindfulness does this simply through the process of doing things and being in that moment, in that time, just being you and nothing else. And this is where mindful practices come from, one of which is that I tend to bonsai trees. And when I do that, I am nothing more than a man tending to a bonsai tree. I'm perfectly peaceful. And one can do this with origami, with building models, with a number of Zen mindful practices. And what I discovered is that you can do this when you are over a bar with an awful lot of weight on, or under a log that you intend to press over your head, or when you've got a sandbag or a very heavy implement planted on your chest and you're running it back and forth as many times as possible, or you've got a ring with a couple of 100 kilos on that you're holding for as long as humanly possible. You can lose yourself in that as much as you can any other process, and it becomes, in a way, a mindful meditation. Anyone who's seen me compete knows that I can be a bit of a showman when I compete, and I growl, I make another noise, I roar. We'll get to some of that later. But that is in itself would seem like it's like you're somehow out of balance. But in a way, that in itself is simply becoming what you are, mindful of what you are. You are a human being doing an absolutely extraordinary thing. And that's how those two things really can combine and collide together perfectly.
Wow, it's incredible description. I mean, I'm not lost for words very often, as you've seen from watching some of my other episodes of this show. But actually, there are times I'm listening to what you're saying, my mind's working over it. I'm just thinking, wow, it's so clear, it's crystal clear the way you describe this. Now, with this process, I'll come back to Strongman now. We'll connect the two. But the last thing with this process for now. Was this something that you were studying and teaching yourself personally, or was this in some way a community that you are or were involved with of other people involved in these interests? I'd be curious to find out more about that as well, please.
There isn't really a community with this, and in certain forms, Zen Buddhism is something that should be taught from master to apprentice. Um, the thing is that in this day and age, one can study all of the great masters by buying books, and some of the greatest Zen masters have been Japanese samurai. And so, look into the Five Rings by Miyamoto, something that I've read very recently. I'll combine this also with reading some of the great Stoic philosophers, because Stoicism is something that works throughout, just in life in general, but also carries over into Zen practice, mindful practice very well. So, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, some of those people from the classics are something that you can really carry over into that philosophy, and it really works. So to say I'm self-taught would not quite be accurate. Um, I'm taught by the masters, but the masters by their writing, and it's not something that I practice communally. One of my favorite sayings of Miyamoto is seek nothing outside of yourself. Validation by what you do should come solely from yourself and not from anything or anybody else. You are in control of your reactions to things. You are the one who gets angry or doesn't, who finds peace, who doesn't. You are the one who is ultimately responsible for this. And so I don't look outside of myself to a community, to anybody else for validation. It's nice when it happens. It's lovely when it happens. I haven't got these, yeah, I haven't got these medals up for no reason whatsoever. But ultimately, I am my own judge, and I am my own validation. So I tend to do that by myself. I appreciate community, and I appreciate the strongman community, and I appreciate whenever I've come across anybody with similar beliefs as myself, similar ideas as myself. It helps to inform that, but ultimately, I am responsible for myself, as I think we all are.
Absolutely. Well, it's a very powerful lesson. I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but what you're saying there about Marcus Aurelius and some of those things. Yeah, I mean, personally, they had a profound impact on myself. Meditations and quite a few of his works. I don't always mention it because Stoicism has become very trendy in recent times. And if you say that, people think you're, or at least it might think you're jumping on the bandwagon with that one. But it is still very, very powerful. It is very time proven, obviously. And with the whole Zen thing, I mean, yeah, not to go off on a tangent again, but the same thing. I've had a very long and eventful journey with searching for answers, tried different religions, everything, been involved in Christianity, been involved in Islam at one point, though I never actually joined it, but I was learning different types of meditation, all different things. But Chan and or Zen or the different schools of this and Tibetan Buddhism as well, I looked into, and it shows. I find this quite fascinating on a personal level. It shows how little we talk about this because one of the greatest people who had an effect on me with his works, I've read countless books of his, and I don't even know exactly how you say his name because I don't talk about this. But the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. I have no idea how you say it, but he taught me a lot of things. I don't talk about this, but I've got, funnily enough, as you know, I've moved to Cyprus, so most of those books are on the ship coming over at the moment. But I've technically got a massive collection of this type of thing because of what you said about the bonsai trees and because of what you said about competing, and using this philosophy because it's applicable, because it's something that's not out there, it's something that's in here, and because it's something that's not separate to your daily life, but it's something that is part of everything you do and everything you are, was the thing that really struck me, because until that point, it was very much, you know, you pray to something outside of yourself. You get where I'm going with this. I don't want to go off on a tangent with this, but I wouldn't ordinarily do this, but I'm quite amazed at that flow of thought, the connection, the common ground there. Coming back to strongman for just a minute, and then we'll connect the two. So obviously, you became the strongest man in those two gyms. You're at the gym you are now, or three gyms. But anyway, you were moving up the levels with this. In terms of competition, I mean, I'm always fascinated by this process. You obviously at some point took this from, okay, I want to be the strongest man in this gym, to actually I can take this out and compete and all the rest of it. And I find that process very fascinating, because people come through it in different ways, but at some point it happens to everybody. Okay, this is more than just fun, or this is more than just looking good. This is actually, I can take this a long way. So I'd like to just find out how that process went for you, if that's okay. And in terms of your early competitions, how they went, your expectations of them versus what happened. Anything you'd like to share about those earliest days, basically?
Yeah, I mean, happily talk about that. I'd recently found a training partner, and the two of us, his name's Matt, absolutely great guy. Unfortunately, he's had to step away from the sport at the moment due to health issues. But I will say that if it wasn't for Matt, I probably wouldn't have ended up where I do. And me and him were doing a log press one day at the gym, and a lady came through who worked at the time for a famous strongman, and said, "You guys are good enough to compete. Why don't you compete?" And we looked at each other and went, "Well, why don't we compete?" We looked at the first competition that came along, which was a local one in Stoke-on-Trent, and we signed up for it. We spent 6 months training harder than I think either of us had ever trained for anything in our lives before. Log pressing, carrying things, deadlifting, day in, day out. We'd spend 3 to 4 hours in 3 to 4 days at the gym, and then 2 weeks before the competition happened, they cancelled it. And we were both absolutely gutted because of the effort that we put in. Luckily for us, another competition then opened up almost immediately afterwards at the same time, and we both went for it. Neither of us had ever competed in strongman before, and we both did very well. It was a beginners competition at the Grindhouse gym in Burton-on-Trent, and my friend Matt got second, and I got third, having won two of the events myself, which should be the deadlift, which is something that I specialize in, and the log press, which is something that I just went through in the most brutal manner possible. I think I discovered who I am as a competitor in that first one, because right after the first event was done, when they put all the scores up, I turned around to everybody. This sounds like an atrocious thing to do, but I did it. I did it for a laugh, and I think everybody got that and went, "Look, I won that event. Get used to seeing my name at the top of that scoreboard." which again, that sounds like a really arrogant thing to do, but everyone then went, "Oh yeah, you just wait. We'll get you on the next one." And it created a camaraderie amongst people, especially amongst guys who this was their first competition. As it was mine, we'd never competed before. It broke the ice between all of us. And from that point on, when everyone stopped worrying so much and just threw themselves into the competition and into the events, and I've found that since then, that's what I tend to do in every single competition that I'm in. Getting third in your first ever strongman competition was good. I mean, it was really good. I very much enjoyed it. And what one must bear in mind as well, that I was 35 years old when this happened, and that is old to start strongman. Which is another point I want to, that I want to make about myself, is that when I was getting into this, a few people have said to me, you're too old to compete. You're 35. The best strongmen, they start in their mid-20s, and that is true. But inside of that time, from being told that by a couple of family members as well, to now, inside of 3 years, I've gone from a novice to an opens level strongman. Don't tell anyone what they can and can't do. If someone's got the determination to do it, they'll do it. And I'm not halfway through my strongman career yet. I'm still going up. So I was very happy to take that one home. My next competition was an Atlas Stone competition. Anyone familiar with strongman at all knows what Atlas Stones are. I went up to Liverpool to do it again. Had a laugh with everyone before we got started. Took second place on that. Second place to my training partner who got first, who as a novice level strongman put up 170 kilo stone, which is very heavy and quite an achievement. I personally managed a 150 at a maximum, but again, very heavy, quite an achievement. I was very happy with that. After that, I had a couple of competitions where I got ego checked, I think would be the term. And again, I see that as a point of personal development there. There are people who would take my next two competitions. I basically came second to last in. And there are people who would take that as, oh, I'm going backwards, I'm going back downhill. Personally, I took that as you need to get yourself in line with this. You start to win everything, you get too big-headed. The bigger the rise, the bigger the fall. And I take that as a personal lesson in humility, is that you can't win everything all the time. And always be prepared for the fact that somebody's going to come along who train harder than you, who is simply naturally better than you, or you've just underestimated what it is that you're going to do. And that happens. But again, I had a really good fun in those competitions. And then came back to my last two competitions. My first ever intermediate competition was great. Because as well as competing in strongman, I crew for strongman competitions. I got into crewing for strongman competitions. That's a whole other story there. And I didn't intend to compete in this competition whatsoever. My first ever intermediate one. Turned up there, and it turned up there were only 4 guys in intermediate category on the day. So one of the organisers gave me a nudge and said, "You're strong enough to do that." I'm sure that I am, but I'll give that a go. And in typical fashion, I could have taken it lightly. I could have tread lightly. I threw absolutely every bit of strength, every bit of determination that I had at that competition, and got second. And I was very happy with that. And then after that, I've been on to opens level contests, and that's pretty much the beginning of my strongman career.
Wow, it's absolutely incredible from a number of points of view that really stand out to me. Obviously, the age thing is actually quite cool, because it shows people that really is just a number, to be quite honest with you. And as with so many things, it's all up here, what you can or can't do at certain ages. But so that's another thing. What you said about the losses, I mean, I love that. Or the competitions that didn't go so well in terms of rather than feeling embarrassed or sort of stung by the fact, oh, I didn't do so well, actually taking it as a lesson, as a positive. Amazing. I mean, what you've accomplished in the length of time as well, the short, I mean, it's not a long time really. It probably feels it when you're training every day, but at the same time, it's an amazing thing to have achieved so much. So there's a lot there. Now, we'll go deeper into that in a moment with a few of your future plans. I want to talk about the surgery, back from that. Before we do, one other connection here. It might be an abstract connection, or it might just be elementary to you, but when it comes to pushing through the pain barrier, for want of a better term, and obviously combining that with meditation and being mindful and all these type of things, is there a connection there? I mean, obviously there's a connection there, as you said, with losing yourself in the process, which is a beautiful thing to talk about and describe. But when it comes to that point where obviously your mind kicks in and says, okay, look, this really hurts, do you want to stop now? And all these things that are bound to happen to anybody doing what you do you apply these same principles in those moments? If you get what I'm going with this one, I think it's valuable for people as well.
Absolutely. As you know, you've spoken to strongman before. A strongman is for everyone who can endure the pain for it. and it is painful. My hips hurt, my arms hurt, my back hurt after every week of training, and doing the events can be incredibly painful as well. The attitude that I have towards pain is simply that it's mine. It comes from me. I own it. And if you fight against it, then it will become worse. If you just take it upon yourself and go, this is me, it comes from me, it's part of me, then it becomes a lot more durable. So yeah, in a way, I won't say that it's a meditation in and of itself, but you can just sort of accept it. You can accept it, and then it will make it a lot easier. The analogy that I would use for this is if you're out and it's cold, you probably won't experience this in the Mediterranean. But to anybody else, if you're out and it's cold, it's really cold, then if you fight against the cold, if then you'll shiver, you won't like it, you won't enjoy it, you'll have a hard time, you'll feel that it's pain. But if you just accept internally, it's cold and I'm just going to take that, you'll get through it better. And the same goes with pain when it comes to training and strongman events. Except that that pain comes from you. It is not an external force that's been applied on you. It is your reaction to it that causes you discomfort. And you can accept a lot of it and you can take a lot more of it.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, because the thing is, George, I mean, I'm not trying to sort of pigeonhole you as, just a Buddhist and just a strong man, because as you know, everybody, there's infinite layers and there's a lot of different things that come into this. But for the purposes of what we're doing today, I find the connection fascinating. And I mean, it's just one of those things. I read this thing a while back about a Buddhist monk who set himself on fire in protest to the Vietnam War, I think it was, and actually meditated as he died and didn't cry out and didn't do anything. And it's one of the most painful things to be burned. And I know that that's a bit twisted, but I actually find it really fascinating that somebody could master their responses to that level. That I mean, it's quite extraordinary. And again, with yourself, it's not really okay. It's not meditation, but it's an observation of the pain. I love the lessons in this way. Even what you said earlier about things that go well, things that don't go well. It had that the impermanence or that concept that everything changes and so forth. So there's a lot of things. Well, as I knew when I contacted you that this would be full of wisdom and useful wisdom, applicable wisdom, not just intellectual wisdom, but wisdom that people can actually put into practice. And it's important to say for our viewers as well, whether you're interested in Buddhism or not, and whether you're competing as a strongman or anything like that or not, a lot of the things that we're sharing today are applicable to any life area, and that's what makes it very special. Obviously, tips for people who have inquiring minds and are searching for answers, tips for people who want to compete in strongman, sure, that is fantastic. But then going deeper into things that people can apply in any area of life, I absolutely love it. Now, obviously, you're having success with strongman, and you have a right to be proud of it from a certain perspective. But obviously, it's perhaps from a different perspective that some people would think of it, because as you say, you are your own validation and whatnot. So when it comes to measuring your success internally and measuring to some extent competing with yourself, I guess. Well, I'm saying that, I mean, I know there was a bit of banter in the gym, but really the vibe I get is you competing with yourself. How do you measure how well you're doing? Because I know you said earlier that it's nice when the validation comes from outside, but you don't need it the way that some people do. You've mastered being your own, being in control of your own life, your own responses, your own thoughts. When it comes to that and basically not developing an ego as such, even though you're succeeding and you're doing what very few people can do, I'm interested to explore a little bit of that connection as well, if you get what I'm going with this one.
Yeah. Anybody who says that they don't compare what they are capable of doing with other people is all out lying. It's not true. You compare what you can do with everybody else, and that is only natural. And in addition to that, it can be a mechanism for how you get ahead. The trick is to not do it in a negative fashion. See, there are guys who I train with who go to my gym who can deadlift considerably more than I can, who can log press considerably more than I can, who are incredible strongmen, who are incredible athletes. It'd be easy to go, I don't like you. I wish I could do that. I want to get ahead of you for this, that, and the other. What would be a healthier way? What I try and do is aspire to do that and use it as a positive way instead of a negative way. So when I can see my friend down at the gym can log press 170 kilos without so much as bending his legs, do it from his chest, and I go, I want to do that. I'm going to watch him. I'm going to learn from him, and I'm going to do my best to catch him up. Even if I never do it, it will improve me overall to try. So don't do it via jealousy. Don't do it out of spite. Don't do it out of nastiness. Do it out of development for yourself. That validation, as I said, it comes from yourself. And overall in the sport, it's very important to look at yourself contextually. Like I've said, I didn't start until I was 35. If we look at some other athletes who started a bit later, how did they do? How did they get ahead? It's okay to compare yourself to that. And it's okay to measure yourself to that, as long as you don't let it get to you in a negative manner. Always try and move it forward positively. And something that I try and my best to do whenever possible, even with my rivals, is to congratulate them and enjoy their success as much as you enjoy your own. If they do really well, always make sure you go up, shake their hand, tell them well done. And if somebody does something fantastic or extraordinary, enjoy it as much as they do. Like, and if they haven't realized how extraordinary or fantastic it was, go and tell them. Go and tell someone that that was perfect form. I've never seen form like that before. I've never seen somebody do that with such ease before. Take that positivity forward, and not only will it benefit them, but it will benefit you as well, because you will aspire to that sort of perfection.
Absolutely. Well, again, it's very, very, very profound, because what I love about that, George, is the fact that basically, it might sound sort of obvious, but one of the things I found really cool about speaking with so many people who are competing at an elite level in one way or another is the fact that obviously, as humans, we all have the same emotions, we all have the same things, but it's all about how we choose to handle them. And it's something that is really powerful about what you've said there, is the fact that, everybody's going to feel, as you say, the comparison, or everyone's going to feel I don't know, jealous at some point, or these different things. But it's all about how people choose to handle it, and as you say, how you choose to respond to it, in that way. And I think that is super, super valuable, because a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they look at people who are achieving things like yourself, or people who are achieving great things, and they think, okay, that person must be different in some way to a normal person. And what they don't realize is that all of those people, even people all the way at the top of the mountain like Eddie Hall, and people like that, they all feel these type of things. They all feel probably, jealousy, or anxiety, or anger, or whatever. But it's all about how you respond to it. As you like what you said with the pain, how you're the one generating it, you can control it, etc. So it's a really powerful lesson in itself. And I never expected that one, but I've heard it over and over again. People starting out and they think, well, can I be like such and such? As if there's some other thing than a human, but they are, at the end of the day, everyone's just people, even at the highest level. And it's really good, because obviously one of my aims for this is to inspire people starting out as well. So brilliant topic there. In terms of something else that will put that to the test with you a little bit as well, is obviously the surgery thing. You've come back from, I don't know exactly what. I mean, I've seen the photos on your Facebook, and I've seen like the arm, and it looks brutal, man. I mean, it looks nasty. And obviously, you will have been out of competition. So there's a sort of mental and physical aspect to this. Starting with the real simple side of it, what did actually happen to you with that injury?
I was at a competition, Battle for Mercia, which by the way, is held every year at in Stafford. It's a fantastic competition. It's an outdoor competition in the middle of a medieval fair where they have mock battles, where you have people dressed as Vikings. It's a very unique competition put on by BTB Sleeves. It's a competition that's done twice now. And I went to that competition, and it is very hard. It is a very demanding competition that has a lot of natural stonework with it. And this involved a deadlift, and that deadlift was not a traditional type of deadlift. It was picking a 280 kilogram stone up off through a platform, a Ukrainian style deadlift. Due to the health and safety concerns of this, we were told we're not allowed to use straps that you would usually use to deadlift. This put a big smile on my face because I'm well aware of my pain tolerance and grip ability. And whilst this is a funny story as well, because everyone was getting 4, 5, 6 reps. I stood up on that platform, looked at that stone, and went, I'm going to give everybody a show here. Everyone's going to get a big show. So I did 6, 7, 8 reps, stopped, put the chain down, turned to the crowd and went, who wants to see me do some more? It was a gladiator moment. It was, are you not entertained? Turned back round to the stone and did another 2 reps on top of that to take it to 9 reps at 280 kilos. Walked down the steps and thought, I'll give them some even more flair here. Yeah. By the way, I did this entire competition in a kilt because if you're going to do a big, an outdoor comp like that, do it properly. And I went, see that stone? That's my stone. I own it. Nobody else can lift like I can lift. And left. And the next guy turned up and did 14 repetitions on the same stone. Which was absolutely amazing. But that, I mean, well, I honestly didn't think he was going to be able to touch my numbers. So that was really, really good fun, and that was one of the best stories I think I've got from a competition. I went through the rest of that competition, came 5th, which is good for an opens level contest. A very high standard of athlete there. Had a few days off and forgot that I'm 37 now. You need some really solid recovery time before you think to do anything heavy again. Now, you need at least 10 days between very heavy deadlifts. So your muscles can recover, so your tendons can recover. But I ignored that principle and I paid a hefty price for it. I went back in the gym and I had 300 kilos on a standard deadlift bar. I could have picked it up with straps. I could have dropped the weight, but I was just determined to do a mixed grip, what they call a raw deadlift with it. It came 3/4 of the way up. I was going very quickly. I've pulled that weight hundreds of times, not a problem. And I put a slight bend in my left arm, and the distal bicep tendon, which is the one that connects the forearm with the bicep, split and ruptured then and there. It tore clean off the bone. It was a very unpleasant experience. I sort of was quite shocked at what happened there. I caught the whole thing on video because, of course. Which I subsequently posted as well. I watched one's bicep recede up the arm. Again, the guy who was with me, he watched me essentially just take the discomfort of it. I did not really show anything other than surprise at what happened, and he even said, how did you do that? And again, it just came down to that's I did it, nobody else did. Shouting about it's not going to help matters. But it became clear what I'd done, and that is it's a fairly common injury with weightlifters, but it is a serious injury. I took myself off to A&E, who very quickly got me to talk to orthopedics, got me an MRI to confirm what I'd done, and inside of 5 weeks, I had the tendon reattached. But I think that in and of itself, the whole thing has been an incredible learning experience, which was until that point, I'd never been coached. I'd never listened to anyone's advice on my training apart from me, because why would I? Because of how far I'd come in the sport on my own. And the thing that I learned in that moment was that there's a reason that people have coaches. There's a reason that people take knowledge from others, and maybe that is something that I needed to start doing. So, immediately after I'd had the surgery, which was an incredible amount of discomfort, going through a surgery is not something that is pleasant for anybody to do. I contacted a coach, my coach John Clark, who's himself an incredible natural strongman, has some incredible achievements in the sport, is a marathon runner as well. He's an incredible athlete in and of his own right, agreed to take me on and coach me. And going forward, not only to help me train around, because I was 2 weeks out and I was back training again, for so many reasons, but primarily because it just wouldn't feel right not to be training. But he's helping me to train around the issue. I'm 6 weeks out from surgery at this point. The pain from surgery is all but gone. But I will not be able to put any serious weight through the arm for another 3 months, and I won't be able to train at the weights I was before, probably for another 4 to 6 months, hopefully sooner. But obviously, I will consult with physios, with orthopedics, with my coach, and see about getting into it safely. Far too many people, in particular that do this injury, rush back into it, rush back into training. And that's why it's very common for a detachment to happen a couple of times, because they don't take it seriously enough what's happened. And this is the point, this is sort of like the last point that I've been through to get where I am now, is just I have to train smart as well as hard at this point. I have to use my brain as well as just raw brawn. And though to a certain degree, for the first time ever, I've had to surrender that part of the ego that said that I know best how to do this, because look how far I've gone. I've surrendered that part to say I need somebody to help me go forward in this, and that's what my coach is doing.
Yeah. It's an incredible process in terms of what you've learned from what you said at the very end there, the ego aspect of it. I mean, the injury itself, man, I don't know what to say other than that's rough, because I mean, I've seen videos of that injury before, and you can actually see it move underneath and everything, and oh man, it goes through me. But at the same time, it's part of the game. Thank you for talking about it, because I know that something like that is not necessarily something you want to
Can I just say, everybody
Yeah.
has heard about this. Everybody in the gym who dared talk to me has heard every single detail about this injury. Because if I've had to endure it, then everybody else has had to endure it as well. Random people in stores, I've just gone up. But what have you done? Oh, I've run through the entire story with them. Everybody's heard about this.
Oh, that's funny. It's actually quite. I can just picture those conversations going down, and out. The looks on people's faces, especially people outside of the gym. Like you say about in supermarkets. I mean, the looks on their faces must be priceless. You should record that. Like try to have one of those webcams, record their responses or something. Go on then. What sort of responses do you get? Especially, obviously, people in the game will know about this type of thing. But when you speak to a non-strength person, if you like, what do they say about it usually, the injury?
It varies between, that's what you get for what you do. You're an idiot, and just pure sort of amazement, disgust. It's like that natural response. I think a lot of people at this point have seen that injury happen in YouTube videos and things like that. Like I think a lot of us have, but I don't think many of them have actually come across somebody who's done it. And I'll always say, if anyone's overly interested, oh, I've got the video of me doing it. If you want to watch what happens, and you see that sort of morbid curiosity of people go, no, but yeah, I do, but no, I don't. But yeah, I do want to see it. So a lot of people have watched that video of it happening. Yeah.
Well, yeah, when it after this is over, like, send that to me, please, because I will follow. Because you know something like what I was saying, George, like what I said with the monk who set himself on fire and stuff. I don't know what it is with me. I mean, I'm a very, as you know, I'm a very spiritual person. I love talking to people. I'm very compassionate. I love animals. I got all this side, but I do have something a little bit slightly twisted, and I don't know what it is. But some things like that, I don't like them, but I don't really shy away from it either. Like the other day here in Cyprus, the food is very, very fresh over here. It's different. Like, you pick up your vegetables, you pick up lettuce, you pick up all these things, and it's still got the earth on it from like where it's been picked over here. And I mean, I've lost weight because it's so fresh. But the other day I was in the supermarket and they got skinned rabbits in there in packets, but it's like the whole rabbit. I'm sorry for any vegans watching this. And the thing is, I'm definitely an animal lover. I mean, I'm anti-poaching. I'm not a big fan of hunting, although I do have friends who hunt, but I don't like it. I actually support things like that. But there's something that's a bit raw and a bit primal like that that's actually fascinating, because it's like when you tear that, you push yourself to sort of to a limit. I mean, even though our limits don't exist as such, because again, they're up here, but you push yourself to a sort of limit and then that injury. There's something I think is a bit primally fascinating. That's the animal in us, which I think is there. I think it's something that spirituality helps us rise above, from a certain perspective, with higher reasoning, without thinking. But it's always going to be there. That part of us is a bit primal, and there's something about, like, okay, that type of thing happened to them. I don't enjoy it, but it's like, okay, that person pushed it as far as it could go, and I'm fascinated to see what's there, if that makes any sense. So yeah, later on we'll have a look at that. But for the purposes of, obviously, you need to heal up and you need to spend a bit of time, presumably doing the other things in your life, the bonsai trees and different. I think I saw somewhere that you like photography as well, didn't I? Or did I see
Landscape.
that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love nature. I live in the Staffordshire Moorlands, which is part of the Peak District National Park. I love the hills around here. I love the valleys around here. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth. Um, and I love to get out when I can to take pictures of the sky, the trees, the moorlands. I love the solitude of it, and I love to get out of there and do that. I would say that that's hobby number two or three. If strongman is number one, if certain bonsai and another mindful practice is number two, then photography is certainly the number three one that I love and enjoy.
Oh, that's very cool. That is very, very cool. Yeah, because I'm a professional photographer as well. It's different. I do people,
Yeah.
sports events, but it's definitely another common interest there. But what I was actually thinking of that.
You actually know what you're doing, whereas I just go out with a camera phone and take pictures of things that look pretty and post them.
Well, that's the love of it, though. I mean, I go and do that. I love nature as well. I love it to bits. It's my favorite place to be. I don't really like built up areas. I mean, I like to visit cities, but I could never live in one. I like natural places, and I do that to keep the love of it. Because when you're doing all the things I do with sports events and famous people and weddings and music events and all different, because it's mostly people stuff that I do. Obviously, I love it, but it gets a bit like I need to keep the creativity fresh. And I go out and do landscape things with that, and it's I sort of miss the greenery of the UK, because it's more arid here, but then they've got other things with the sunsets and things that are amazing. So but anyway, that's a tangent. But yeah, at least you've got a bit of time for these other interests. What do you do work-wise, George, if you don't mind me asking, when you're not competing, when you're not doing these other things?
I think, unsurprisingly, I'm a security officer. I have worked as a doorman. I intensely disliked it, and so I stopped doing that. And I work as a security officer. I've worked at warehouses. At the moment, I monitor a recycling centre, and I do this on a permanent night shift as well. Now, knowing me and knowing something about me, one can understand why it is that I do this, because this gives fantastic opportunity for rest, for recovery, and for the solitude that helps me with the certain things that I practice doing. I am on my own and never see another person when I'm at work for 12 to 11 hours through a shift. which again, anyone who knows me well knows that suits me very well.
Absolutely. Well, again, I mean, it goes back to finding your place in things, doesn't it? It goes back to authenticity, which is, there's a lot of lessons that you've shared, but one of the things I really like that you've shared is, basically being your authentic self no matter what. And that type of thing is a phrase that's thrown around too much these days. And, on social media, it's very easy to pretend to be something. But one of the things I really like about you as a person, and I do mean this as a compliment, is you are like 100% George. I mean, there's no pretense, and it's a really good thing. That again, the world needs more of, and it's again, it's something that whether you realize it or not, that you sort of share and represent with what you do. So at least you'll have some time for the bouncy trees, for the photography, and to do some other things. Uh, when it comes to coming back from your recovery and everything, and obviously, if we look past that time of healing, however long it will be, no doubt you'll come back from it. I mean, so many people have. What do you want to do from there in terms of achievements in Strongman? And with this, I don't mind. It doesn't really have a time. I mean, you can go like a year, you can go like 5 years. I mean, it's up to you. And I know again with Buddhism and with meditation, the future is an interesting concept because arguably, is it actually there? Or is it our imagination, etc. But nonetheless, you're bound to have plans. So can you share some of those with us, please?
Absolutely. And I'll start this with something that my coach made me do, which he says, I want you to give me three short term, three medium term, and three long term goals for what you hope to achieve, which was an incredible exercise in what it is that I want out of the sport and in life in general. And of course, the short term one was I hope to not lose as much strength as humanly possible whilst I'm into recovery. And that was the primary one on there. The medium goal, the primary one was really to get to the point where I'm competitive at an opens level again. And I very much hope that will probably be around the middle of next year when that happens. I'm going to take my time with this healing and recovery and do it properly because I don't particularly want to go through this again. I'm not afraid of injury. You can't be afraid of injury and do this sport. What I don't like is the setback that it gave me. I don't want the setback again. And in the long term, I'm not going to lie, I have some bold ambitions there, which is that in a couple of years, I'll turn 40 years old. And with the trajectory that I'm on at the moment, if I can maintain a degree of that, I don't think it's outside of the realms of possibility to compete at Britain's Strongest Master, be that natural or just Britain's Strongest Master if I can qualify for it, and maybe even look to get in a podium at that and go into the World's Strongest Master. That'd be my biggest dream ever. I'm not guaranteeing that that's ever going to happen, but it's something that I will be looking at, will be focusing on, will be working towards in the long term in the future. I'm not going to do strongman forever. Although I love the sport, it's not something that I can do forever and ever. It's not something that anybody can do forever and ever. It's something that I want to do forever and ever. I have my goals, and when I achieve my goals, I'll look at what else it is that I want to do in the world. Going back to the landscapes and stuff, walking and hiking is something that I love, being out in nature. I always wanted to go up some big mountains, some of those really big ones. One thinks of Kilimanjaro or Mont Blanc. I'd love to spend some time in Nepal, obviously a very spiritual home for people like me, or Japan. So Mount Fuji, or even I'm going to say the big one, Everest would be lovely. I mean, that would take a lot of work to get to that point. But if I had one goal to be a competitive strongman who's done quite well, and then later on in life to climb up Mount Everest would be an achievement that I would be very, very proud of.
Oh yes. Well, why not? I mean, it's something again, as soon as we're talking about this type of thing, Kaizen, isn't it? Continual improvement and everything. I mean, this is something that is very much in your life, and yeah, I mean, a lot of anything is possible. By the way, I know some really good people who do mountain guide work or whatever you call it, including people who've climbed Everest and everything. So if you want any help with that, I've interviewed them. You might have it covered, but just to put that in there. Also going to say, oh, but Japan and Nepal, man, I can see you fitting in there. I mean, I definitely think it's on my top of my bucket list to visit more, of the Orient, basically. Japan, Thailand. There's a few different areas, but not to go off on a tangent with that, Nepal's on there as well. But yeah, I can see you fitting in there. I mean, even what you said earlier about the samurai, and again, I've the Five Rings. I've read that, the Book of Five Rings. Hagakure, was a big one that really had an impact on me. I think that's how you say Hagakure, but written by an actual samurai and all this. And I definitely think that you embody that. I mean, it's one of those things where who knows why we're born, when and where we are. But I think there's an argument for you being born in maybe in the wrong century or the wrong country or something, because you do have that sort of energy about you. And I mean that as a compliment, very still, very calm, but also with that warrior aspect. And again, I don't mean it to sound cliche, I really don't, but I'm sitting here and I genuinely feel that vibe, like the strength, but the calm, and it's just like wow. So I definitely think
That's a
having
huge
a
compliment,
spiritual
actually.
home.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's a very big compliment. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean it. I sincerely mean it because I've been sitting here thinking that, and I've been thinking, I'm talking to you, I mean, you're not really British or whatever in your um sort of your vibe, I mean, neither am I. I mean, that's part of why I left there, but in a different way. But it's part of why I left there, and I definitely feel that with you. I mean, other than the accent and stuff, there's not really. I don't get any of that vibe with you, and it's definitely. People talk about like finding your spiritual home, finding your tribe, and all this type of thing. I don't know. It is true. I mean, I've come out here to Cyprus and I feel so at home with the European people and the pace of the lifestyle and the sensitivity of the people, how the empathy that they have for each other, which I think has really declined in the UK among other things. So I've met enough people who've done it, but I can personally say as well, it is a real thing that just because we're born somewhere doesn't mean we actually belong there as such, and it's a very I really get that vibe with you, like an old soul
I've got
concept. And again,
many a time throughout my entire life. You're an old soul. You were
yeah.
born in the wrong century. You'd have been happier in feudal times. You'd have been happier. In the height of some old great empire, you'd have been happier person. And yeah, I accept that that's probably true. But I also, I am where I am, and maybe having people like me around and people who are willing to just deal with modernity and bring what we learn to modernity might be a positive in changing things for the better given the right opportunities.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm with you on that because you can't wish your life away. I mean, that's funny enough. That's exactly where I was going with the whole thing because um yeah, basically the world needs it. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I mean, we're talking about ego and all this type of thing, right? I mean, we live in a world that is just fed on ego. I mean, people eat it up for dinner. I mean, it's just they advertise.
It's
Go on.
overrated. Yeah, it's this is why I both love and hate what social media has done. I do not. There are some social medias that I just cannot stand whatsoever. I don't like Instagram. I understand why people use it. I understand that it's a useful tool, even in something like Strongman, because people look at it, people look what you can do. It can help you get ahead, but at the same time, it feels like playing on the fact that we are at heart approval junkies, that we want fear or reverence from people. And that is a very powerful tool to use against most people. And it's something that I've tried very hard to escape. And when you look at my social media, I am about spreading things that fundamentally help you get out of that cycle. But I don't post things for the likes. I post things because I want to share them. And I think what's key about that is that I post as many of my fails as I post my yeah, as I post my wins. I posted all about my injury because people need to know in this sport bad things happen. And that is as important as posting everything that you win. I remember hearing years ago that people never take photos of sad moments. And that is how social media works on just a bigger scale. Nobody ever shares or leaves up the bad things, the bad moments. And that creates a false idea of how life works. That creates a false zeitgeist in society, and it's doing us a lot of bad. It's doing us a lot of bad, where a lot of people seem to think that they're the main character in their own movie, and that they're not, or conversely, the opposite to that, that they're failing because they're not doing as well as everybody else does. And that's a bad thing. That's a bad way for a society to be. That's not how we're supposed to live, I don't think. Just looking, I've traveled a little myself. I spent some time in the US. I've been to Africa, I've been to Russia, I've been to the Indian subcontinent. And when you get away from that sort of modernity, you find that people live simpler but happier lives. And I think that that's not necessarily exclusive to Britain. It's exclusive across everywhere that we have this advanced society. Is it really so advanced? Because an awful lot of us don't seem happy here.
Well, wow. First of all, I mean, you need to keep doing what you're doing because by by having a social media presence, by competing in strongman, by doing what you're doing, you illustrate these points, by words. Sorry about the, if you can hear the motorbikes going, and that's the only thing out here. They love motorbikes, they love buggies, beach buggies. There's a lot of off-road stuff. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, by action and by words, you illustrate these points to people, and they need to know. That's the first thing. So keep doing what you're doing with that. I mean, I think there'd be a good book in you as well, in all fairness. But as well as that, what's the other thing I was going to say? The beach buggy through my thinking then. But yeah, this is the thing, is what you said earlier about combining the modernity and the, not to quite the old world, but the natural ways of living, if you like. It's a very powerful thing, because the upside of this type of thing is, obviously, we can, you and I can get ideas like this out there, or say, if you were learning about Buddhism now. I mean, I know you're still learning, but you know what I mean. If you were discovering it now, it would be quite easy on the internet and things. So there's definitely some upsides, but as you say, there's some big downsides with people, a lot of social media being driven by envy, people always thinking, people effectively being bullied in a way, in the sense, not just cyberbullying now, but the idea that, all the fun is happening somewhere else, and you're not good enough. And by the time you get out of bed in the morning, you're already behind everybody else. These sorts of things are not really, well, as you say, more than not really. I mean, they're absolutely not conducive to any type of happiness, fulfillment, being the best thing. Because one of the other things about this as well is your story really illustrates being the best version of yourself, not being the best at everything, but being the best at being you. And it's very much, there's a lot of the materialism on social media as well, which you know about with Buddhism. I mean, attachment and all that stuff, it's not good. And, it really does lead to a lot of suffering and stress. I mean, obviously we all need stuff, but it's, when I was packing to come to Cyprus, you realize how little you need. I was going through all my stuff thinking, okay, I don't need that, and I don't need that. And I gave so much stuff away to charity and everything, because, it just compounds and it causes you more stress. So there's a lot of things I think that you sort of demonstrate. I mean, nobody's got all the answers, but I'm saying, by doing what you're doing, it's a very, very powerful thing. I'm really grateful to have done this talk today. I'm going to have to wrap it up shortly because of time, and one of the call, and I can finally have my dinner and everything. But I'm really, really grateful for this today. I'm grateful for your time, obviously, but more importantly than that, I'm grateful for you being such an open book with this call, sharing many things about your life, things that are quite personal, giving a very brutally honest assessment of the highs and the lows, as you've said, what you said about people who never take photos of things they don't like. I mean, today we've shown both. And I went into this with the viewpoint of saying, okay, we want some fun stories from your competition. Well, competitions, we've got that, and then some, and I want some wisdom and some knowledge. And, between those two, man, I mean, we've ticked the box and then some, and I knew it would be good, but this has honestly exceeded my expectations. I really do mean that. It's been a fantastic interview. So yeah, I mean, I'm just grateful for you sharing everything you've shared, to be honest.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to come on and talk. I hope it helped somebody. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will go on if you let me. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.